So when I debate atheists, I come across this argument a lot. Evolution is a fact, which proves we don't need a God, which proves God doesn't exist. I'm going to show you how I debate them, what I say, my response. But I'm a blue-collar guy, and I liken myself to an infantryman in the army of the Lord. And at the end of the video, I'm going to introduce you some special forces guys that are really up on the latest science on this and the latest arguments. But as a blue-collar guy, you can still fight the fight. As a regular layman in the church, you can still defend the faith. I'm going to give you some cliff notes, some quick points. If anything, it's going to make the atheist seek out and say, okay, well, maybe I don't have all the answers. And at best, it's going to, you're going to win the argument. But again, like I always say, if you get angry, you lost. So keep your cool. Hit them with the facts. They don't want to hear any theories. They just want to hear the facts. And I'm going to give you the facts the best as I know them. So, according to top biologist Francisco Ayala, evolution can mean three things. Number one, present-day organisms descended from organisms that lived earlier with modification. Nothing radical, earth-shattering there. Second, explanatory mechanisms behind evolution explain genetic mutation and natural selection. And third, it could mean the reconstruction of the evolutionary tree of life going back to primordial origins. According to Francisco Ayala, only the first one is a fact in their opinion. When they say evolution is a fact, they're just talking about that first one, which doesn't disprove God in the least. All it's saying is present-day organisms descended from organisms that lived earlier with modification. According to this top evolutionary biologist, to go to the second and third explanation, basically that we all evolved from this amoeba, would take extraordinary extrapolation. And in science, extrapolations often fail, as in the case of Einstein. When Einstein tried to extrapolate his specific theory of relativity to his rotational theory of relativity, it failed. So to say because present-day organisms descended from earlier organisms with modifications, that all of the evolutionary story is true, is a huge leap. Goes way beyond the data, according to Dr. Francisco Ayala, one of the top biologists. And that's why, according to a recent survey, let me get this name of this right, because people want to know the source, the National Center for Science Education, most evolutionary biologists believe in God. I mean, you would think that none of them do if you listen to Richard Dawkins or the late Christopher Hitchens, but these are just very vocal. The new atheists that I spoke about in another video that just want to destroy religion because they think religion is dangerous. But the less vocal, the scientists that are really in the field, most of them believe in God. Now, some of them are what they call progressive evolutionists or progressive creationists, depending on what point of view you're coming from. And they believe God created, or an intelligent being created the evolutionary process, and periodically through time intervened when chance alone wasn't enough. Then you have the theistic evolutionist or the theistic creationist biologists that believe that God created the evolutionary process and created in such a way that chance alone was all that was needed. So my friends might say, well, what about the Genesis account? Well, according to most Bible scholars, both Protestant and Catholic, when you study the Bible, you got 77 books written by dozens and dozens of authors, and they each use different genre. So you have to understand the literature genre of every book. I mean, some are parables, some are analogies, some are historically accurate accounts of what happened, some are poetic, like in Psalms and the Song of Solomon. Some are symbolic, okay? And according to most scholars, the book of Genesis was more of a symbolic way of telling, human beings 5,000 years ago that God created the world. I mean, God couldn't go into a specific scientific account where they could understand it 5,000 years ago. Now, the six-day the six-day creation account that most fundamentalists believe could be accurate too. I mean, none of us were there, so we don't know. The point is, the evolutionists aren't positive. The evolutionists can't prove their point. There's more questions than answers, okay? And another point is, if evolution is true, that doesn't disprove God. But if evolution is not true, well, they don't have nothing to stand on. The atheist has no argument. I mean, they based everything on evolution, that there's no God. So I think you have to have more faith to be an atheist than you do to be a Christian. I think we have a strong argument. And that's why Pope Francis recently said, well, the church is not anti-science. Atheists like to say the church is anti-science. The greatest scientific achievements throughout history were made by the Catholic Church. Even the Big Bang Theory was presented originally by a Catholic priest. In fact, St. Augustine in the late 300s said this. His interpretation of Genesis, he says, he thought God created certain potencies of life forms over time before they actually became. So basically, I think the quote's like this. God created certain potencies of life forms over time. They came to actualization. So that's in the late 300s. So that wasn't a retreat from the biologists, as some people might claim. Oh, you're in the face of all this science, you're getting scared, and now you're making up stuff. No. Evolution should not scare the Christian. In fact, scientists for years have been saying that all of us humans descended from a human that lived 150,000 years ago, who they call the scientific Adam, a male, and from a scientific Eve 90,000 years ago. But recent articles I've read, scientists, biologists are saying, well, this scientific Adam and Eve probably lived at the same time, much closer, not as far back as 90,000 or 150,000. So basically they're saying there was a woman and a man that we all descended from, which would, again, prove the Genesis account. Now, nobody was there. We don't have an eyewitness account. Even the author of Genesis doesn't claim to be there, okay? But what we do know, and what smart atheists would attack, would be the resurrection of Jesus Christ. There is more historical evidence of the resurrection of Jesus Christ than any ancient event ever. So, if you want to disprove Christianity, don't go after evolution, the creation, because I just showed you that argument is weak. What you have to disprove as an atheist is that Jesus Christ didn't rise from the dead. If you could disprove that, then Christianity fails. Then you win the argument. But you will find, if you honestly search, you will find the evidence is in favor of Jesus Christ. Even Richard Dawkins, the most ardent atheist out there that's trying to destroy anybody's belief in religion, once said, oh, Jesus probably didn't even exist. But then John Lennox, one of these special forces guys I told you about, a professor at Oxford, pinned him down and showed him the evidence, and Richard Dawkins had to admit, yeah, well, Jesus lived, but he was probably a good guy. So Lee Strobel, the editor of the Chicago Tribune, also had a law degree, really smart guy, investigative reporter for years before he became the chief editor of the Chicago Tribune. Wife had become a Christian, and they were both atheists. And he was so mad, he was going to prove to her that she believed in a fairy tale. And he was smart enough to go after the resurrection of Christ. And I think it was maybe a 1 year or 2 year journey where he followed the evidence as an investigative reporter and a lawyer to prove to his wife There's no way Jesus lived and was resurrected. First, he was convinced Jesus lived. And then he was convinced Jesus resurrected. And now, not only is he a believer, but he's a preacher. And his name is Lee Strobel. And this is what happens. So the argument wasn't, did God create the world? I mean, it's just obvious. There's an intelligent design, there must be an intelligent designer. How he did it, that's up for debate. But the fact is, Jesus Christ rose from the dead. And if you look at those facts, there's no denying it. And other facts that you can look at is millions of people who claim to have experienced this resurrection power. Drug addicts, prostitutes, pimps, whose lives have been transformed. One day being totally addicted to drugs, the next day being free. David Wilkerson started a church in Times Square, one of the best choirs around. And they're made up of former heroin addicts, crackheads, prostitutes, pimps, organized criminals. And they will all give the same testimony. The power of God freed them. So that's the true argument. Prove to me how that could be anything other than God. So anyway, there you have it. That's how I would debate them. And I promise you some special forces guy. I just mentioned Lee Strobel, the guy who went on the journey to disprove Jesus. Well, he put all his evidence in the case for Christ. It's Lee Strobel, proving the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Another great guy from Catholic Answers. I love to watch this kid debate. I call him a kid because he's younger than me, but he's a man, but a really smart guy. Trent Horn, Answering Atheism. Great book, I recommend. But now, even among special forces, you got special guys. So like, to become a member of Navy SEAL Team 6, you had to be a SEAL in the other teams first and proving yourself in combat to even try out. And then even some of those guys don't make the team. So this next guy, I would say, is a member of SEAL Team 6 in the Army of the Lord. That's Father Robert J. Spitzer. He's a scientist. He's also a Catholic priest. This book will make your head spin. New Proofs for the Existence of God. If you want scientific proof that God exists, highly recommend this book. Another guy, Protestant guy that I love, William Lane Craig. This guy is the man. You watch him debate Christopher Hitchens. He actually debated Francisco Ayala. He wins. He's phenomenal. He's a gift. He's a gift to us Christians. William Lane Craig. I would say he would be like on the Delta Force. The Army picks Green Berets and Army Rangers to try out for the Delta Force, and not all of them make it. But if they do make it, they become even better. So I would say you got William Lane Craig. I recommend this book, On Guard, or watch his YouTube videos. So here you have it. Delta Force, SEAL Team 6, and then regular SEAL and Green Beret. That's how I would categorize these guys. But don't ever let anybody make you doubt, because our faith is based on reason and evidence. We don't have some foolish little cult that some man made up, 200 years ago. The Catholic faith, and even our Protestant brothers, is based on the teachings of Jesus Christ. 2,000 years, the Catholic Church has supported science, has proven our faith through science. And faith and reason go hand in hand. Don't let anyone think that it doesn't. And if you don't know the answer, seek, and you'll find it. God bless, and I hope this was helpful. Bye.